Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Super Long Life Communities weekly call. We used to call this the steering call or the discovery call. Now it's a weekly online event that we have every Monday to connect and to communicate and to find out what's going on. And so today, my name is Michael Gibson. I'm glad to be hosting today. And we've got a special guest in studio, if you will, quote, quote. And very excited to be able to hear what is being presented today, and very excited to hear about some of the things that are coming up technologically, and also to be able to move things forward politically. And so it's a very important time for us right now. Again, my name is Michael Gibson, and today I have one of our very own speaking to us, giving us a presentation. And just to kind of give you a little bit of background, he's been with us for quite some time, actually from the very beginning. And he happens to be the vice chair of 3 organizations. He's the vice chair of the U.S. Longevity Party, the Arizona Longevity Party, and he's also the vice chair of the Arizona Transhumanist Party. He's also an active member of Humanity Plus and the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and he is one of our beloved own. Please give a warm welcome to David Shumaker. All right.
Thank you for an incredible introduction. That's quite something. Thank you, Michael.
Well,
and,
welcome.
Yeah.
And we look forward to hearing all that you have to share today. So I'm going to go ahead and step out of the way. I'd like you to go ahead and take over and really present what you have for us. We're really excited to hear from you.
Okay, great. Really appreciate that. By the way, this is not a canned talk that I go around and give at various places. I wanted to keep this, since we're family, I wanted to keep this a friendly discussion. I think I'll start out, as I said, online and talk about what transhumanism is a little bit. You've heard me say that before. Then I want to, maybe because of some of the questions that I've heard, is like, why did I get involved in this? And what am I involved in? And what am I doing? That may or may not give you some idea as to, whether you would have an interest in any of this, or be just a good and loyal supporter, which would be pretty great as well. Then I'd like to give you some resources so that you can learn more about this on your own. And I would also like then to have, I said, questions and discussion, because with it being an in-community talk, I want to make sure that we use the time wisely to answer questions that people have. So, because this is not a standard talk, we're going to experiment here a little bit. I'm going to experiment sharing my screen in Zoom. And let's see if that works. Woohoo! Michael, can you see the slide that says transhumanism?
Yes, sir, I can.
Excellent. Just wanted to make sure that was getting out to everybody. People have asked me where that name came from. You know, there's a lot of different things that start with trans, like transportation. Probably a few others that people might be thinking of. Transhumanism is actually putting transformation and humanity together. And that's where transhumanism comes from. And it's not a more recent addition. As a matter of fact, the first time that term was used was by a man by the name of Huxley back in 1951. Some of us, if they were here, were probably didn't have too very many years when that first started getting started. So like many things, this has been a movement that has started out slowly and grown gradually. So let me see if I can move to my next slide. There we go. So as I said, let's talk a little bit about transhumanism in general, and then how and why I got involved, and then some discussion. So I'm going to stop on sharing for a moment. We'll come back to these slides perhaps a little later. So let's see how I unshare this. I think that worked. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thanks for going on this. Thanks for going on this adventure with me as I learned to do this. So, real briefly, last week, before we had our second candidate to be the spokesperson for the U.S. Transhumanist Party for the upcoming political season. Before we had that person talk, I gave a very, very brief and very quick thumbnail of what transhumanism was. I want to go back and spend a little more time on that, and then we'll get into the other points that I talked about. So transhumanism, you saw the definition up there, or how it came together with the term transformation or human. It's basically the idea that humans can evolve past this current physical and mental limitation. You can look that up in the Oxford Dictionary, and that's the definition that they give. If you look it up in other dictionaries, you may find something different. A little later on, I'm going to give you another resource that I think is really good for getting specific information on transhumanism. Michael talked about politics. Transhumanism covers the whole gamut of human society, whether it be medicine, whether it be transportation, and yes, even including politics. And we're going into this political season where all of the different political parties are putting up primary candidates and hoping to get out there and spread their word using the political season. Now, we know the facts of life in the United States that the two main political parties, two dominant political parties, two controlling political parties, however you want to put it, chances are very good that it'll be one of their two candidates that becomes president next year, okay? So the role of the minor parties, including parties that are centered on transhumanism, school is, yeah, we'd love to get somebody elected, but realistically, the goal is to get out there and be able to say, look, this is our candidate. Talk to news sources, whether they be TV or print, talk to magazines, talk to people that will listen and say, here, we want you to see what our input is into the political season. So that's the goal. That's one of the reasons that I'm involved with the U.S. Transhumanist Party. There are other parties that are involved in this too, and another one that's prominent is the Longevity Party of the United States, or the U.S. Longevity Party, one and the same. And they too have an agenda to spread. They're not as active as the U.S. Transhumanist Party as far as putting candidates out there and trying to get into the general purpose news. However, I think that may be something that is on the horizon for them. So, definition of what transhumanism is, and a little bit about the political season, because that was mentioned, and the fact that transhumanism is not new. In the 50s, it got its fledgling start. In the 70s, people that we know, like Max Moore and Natasha Vita-Moore, were speaking out about transhumanism. And we know other people that were speaking about, you know, extra long life and so forth in the 70s as well. These were courageous people that were out speaking about this long before it became fashionable. I find it really interesting now that in 2019, almost 2020, we're getting there, that science, technology is starting to make its way into the general public's viewpoint, to where it's easier now for activists that have been promoting the idea of improving the human condition through science and technology, starting to make that more real. We're starting to see that with a lot of biotech medicine, and we're starting to see it in other areas. Remember, I said transhumanism is something that covers the whole scope of humanity. One of my key areas is, of course, longevity, super longevity, radical life extension. And to the second talking point, you know, how did I get into this? It actually started out when I was in another organization that you all know, and I was, because of that organization, working for the Coalition for Radical Life Extension, as I know at least 2 people on this call, and maybe more, have also done by working on their social media team. And 3 years or so ago, we started publicizing Coalition. We started publicizing its main event, which is RadFest. And for me, that meant joining a select set of groups and starting to repost what the coalition was doing. And I took it on myself that I felt that these groups that I was really interested in, these social media groups, I would get in, read what they had to say, and get a little bit involved in hopes that that would make the posts that I made for the coalition not seem like they were the only things I was talking about, and becoming part of the group, maybe they would be accepted a little more. Now that we're going into our 4th RadFest, it's pretty easy to post out there, and most people will accept what we have to say. That's been my experience anyway. But year 1, and maybe even into year 2, that was not necessarily the case. So being able to go in and have some familiarity with those groups helped. Well, I became very, very interested in the transhumanist groups. I was posting to the Transhumanist Party of Australia. I was to India. I was posting to, and still am, by the way, and posting to different state parties and so forth. And became very, very interested in what they had to say, and realized, especially from my science and engineering background, how important the things that they're talking about, especially in biotech medicine, are to us. At the first RadFest, I had a meeting with the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and our relationship continued to grow. And I realized that I wanted to be more than just somebody that posted to these groups. I wanted to get in and see what I could do, because the U.S. Transhumanist Party goes back to educating the general public, and it was educating me as well. And if we don't educate the general public, we're never going to get the kind of support that we need to see acceptance of things that we're interested in radical life extension, or even expansion of our transportation system into the 21st century, or continued expansion of communication systems into the 21st century, and how to do all that with the fundamental of extra long life in mind. Excuse me. So that social media posting is how I got into it. And the why that I got into it is because the transhumanists have something to say that's concrete. Let me show you. Let me go back to the slides for a moment. Uh-oh, I lost my slides. Well, let me tell you this. I'll do the rest. I'll let you find the slides, because I uploaded to the file area in our super long life community. There's a file section. So I uploaded the slides. So you can go through them when you wish. And one of the things that I would want to show you up there would be links, names and links to other organizations besides, including the ones that I'm talking about. And you can get to their Facebook page, and if they have a web page, you can get to their web page, and you could read for yourself, because you may find that there's things that interest you in these organizations that are different than what interests me. So, and one of the last, on the very last slide, was a slide for further information beyond just the groups that are in transhumanism. And that very last slide is to a place called H+pedia. So if you're familiar with things like Wikipedia and other things like that, where you have a lot of dynamic information that's contributed by a lot of different people, that's what H+pedia is. And it's done by people that are, the information is put there by people that are into transhumanism. So unlike, say, an Oxford Dictionary definition or somebody's random definition might read on the internet, I think H+pedia is a really good idea. And if you have writing skills and an interest, you can sign up with them and you can be one of the contributors as well. You can add and modify articles. And the whole transhumanist movement is very interdependent and on each other and the different parties and among the different organizations, which is why I've ended up as the vice chair of 3 organizations. The vice chair's job is growing the organization, and I like doing that. And these organizations are complementary to each other. They both have radical life extension, super longevity as either their primary value or their very first core value. So I've said a lot. Now that for a bit of discussion, and ask me some questions if I wasn't clear enough, or if I was and you have something more of interest, and I'll do my best to try to do that. And it's not just a question answer session. We can have discussion as well as we go along. So who would like to be the first?
David, happy birthday, young
Thank
man.
You, thank you,
Looking
Joey.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I definitely haven't put enough really and given any time to the Transhumanist Party, but I think you're right. Like, they're out to educate. I remember when Zoltan, what's his name? Zoltan.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Besides him just being a cutie, he just had great things to say. It's like such a vision of where I'd want to be. So I love that. Going to RATFest next week, right? We are in a week. Or is there going to be something there? Will there be a table or presenting?
Yeah, a couple of good points. Let me take the Zoltan one first, and then remind me if I forget to answer the Red Fist question. But when Zoltan was going around in the coffin bus, he was the very first U.S. Transhumanist Party presidential candidate. And in fact, he founded the U.S. Transhumanist Party and appointed himself to be the candidate for the first year. There was no primary election. However, what's going on now is in many aspects the same as then. Zoltan went around driving a coffin bus that obviously got attention, and he was interviewed by various media outlets, and he was able to take that vision that you spoke about and speak very, very eloquently why transhumanism needs a seat at the table as we move into the future. He says so, and I agree that the U.S. Transhumanist Party is probably the only party out there that is really addressing the future on a very broad scale. Now, my interest is radical life extension. That's what I tend to focus on, but there are other aspects of it that are just fantastic as well. So we went through this primary season. Registration for the primary season ended Saturday, and voting is now going on, and it will go on for a week. The U.S. Transhumanist Party not only puts proposals out there and says, here's how we would like to see things differently, but they do them differently themselves as a way of demonstrating. So they use something called a ranked voting system. And we did this when we created the party planks for the platform for the U.S. Transhumanist Party, and we're doing that now in this primary process to pick essentially a Zoltan replacement to go out there and do the kind of things that Zoltan was doing 4 years ago. So in this ranked system, there are 9 candidates. And you can vote, you have to vote for 10. Now let me explain how that works. When you go in and vote, you take your very first choice and you select the circle underneath number 1 for your first choice. And then your second choice is a circle under number 2, and third choice all the way down the list. The reason that there's 10 instead of 9 is one of the choices is none of these guys. And we did that when we were doing the party platform link. It's something that's come into the voting all the way around, because sometimes we would vote on party platform planks that nobody liked. And then that meant they were scrapped, or they went back and they were redrafted. And then you would get 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 different drafts of that plank, and you could choose for the one that you thought had the best wording. So the one that was number 1 got the most points, down to whatever the last one was, which got the least points. Everybody got a graduated say at the table, instead of it being an all or nothing kind of thing, where you have to choose between A and B. So thanks for bringing up Zoltan. That gave me an opportunity to talk about that a little bit. And then your next question was about RADFest. And yes, RADFest will be there. The Transhumanist Party will be at RADFest. Last year, they had a breakout, I think maybe the last 2 years, but last year I know for sure, they had a breakout session during one of the times when Rad City was open, but there wasn't people up on the main stage talking, so that anybody that wanted to learn more about the Transhumanist Party could come to that, as well as the people that are in the Transhumanist Party or transhumanism in general. And we had a great discussion. This year, because there is a primary election and there will be a winning candidate, there is, if you look on the schedule for this year's RADFest, I now forget which day, I think it's the last day or the day, I'll look it up because I hate doing it with my memory. But our party chairman has a time slot to introduce on the main stage the endorsed candidate that will be taking Zoltan's place and will be our primary will be the standard bearer for the U.S. Transhumanist Party. So there'll be a formal event around that as well. So excellent couple of questions. Thank you, Jody.
Hey, David, I've got a couple of questions. First question is, does the winner of the primary, of the transhumanist primary, get to drive around in the coffin bus? Question number 1.
Shall we do them one at a time? My memory works better that way. The coffin bus now, I understand, is being prepared as a museum piece someplace, because it was rather novel, and it was definitely the first of its kind and the first of its time for this kind of cause. So Zoltan had his way of generating publicity. We have the 9 different candidates, and they all have their own focus on how they see about going and doing this. And so it'll be it won't be the coffin bus, but the idea will be to get general media coverage, whether that being going to TV stations, whether that means dressing up in a goofy costume, just to get them to look at you and talk to you. I mean, the coffin bus was kind of that, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what's going on. So the answer will depend upon who assumes that position. And then real briefly, the other 8 candidates aren't necessarily done, because those candidates can then be appointed to other various positions to go out and during the political season, not as the presidential candidate, which may carry a little more weight, but as other lesser candidates' positions, I guess I should say it that way, to be able to go out and generate publicity. So we can conceivably have, if all 9 of them wish to participate, we could have 9 of them out there doing that. One of them labeled the president, who's presidential candidate, which, as I said, will get probably the majority of the press.
Excellent. So my second question, thank you. My second question is, what are some of the most interesting technologies that the Transhumanist Party is bringing up and bringing into the spotlight that you've seen?
Well, that's an excellent question. And I have to say right up front, that runs through the filter of David Shumaker. Because when I read all this, I grab on what's really interesting and cool to me, right? So that's the reason that I put those slides up in the files section in our Super Long Life community area. And go out and look at the U.S. Transhumanist Party webpage. But I also put up their Facebook page because it's much more dynamic, as you might guess. And we have people up there talking about many things in biomedicine, in transportation. AI right now is an exceedingly interesting subject. And by the way, some of these articles are not just people like myself that have a science and engineering background. Some of these are people that are actually working in the field and doing the work. So you have people that are data scientists, for example, posting about AI. Good, credible information. I also put up there the Facebook page for the Transhumanist Party of the United States. And then to a lesser degree, we're still building the two Arizona parties. That's, for longevity and for the Transhumanist Party. And we're going to build those as parallel organizations. And they are just getting started. We'll probably go the meetup route. I've already been talking to some people that are interested in joining when we're ready to get a full launch of those really forcefully going. And once again, I'm really amazed at the kind of people that this subject brings us open to. I'm talking to people that are starting blockchain companies, not for things like Bitcoin, but to have 100% validation of medical history or work history, and using some of these technologies in really new and novel ways. And not just talking about doing it, but getting developers to put this together and launching public companies and putting their money and their energy behind it. So exciting times are ahead. More questions? Hi, Art. Good to see you.
Hey, hi, David. Yeah,
hi.
It's great to see all of you guys.
Great to see you.
Yeah, just as a quick little deal, I'm doing very well. Had the hip surgery done on Monday. I'm off the walker and walking around pretty freely, but still have to take it pretty easy. And I definitely am a practitioner of new technology. So,
hey, you'll fit right into the transhumanists, right? You got a new hip, right?
Exactly. What I'm going to do now is just, start creating a little bit less of an invasive way to have these kind of procedures done. But it's good. I'm experiencing a lot of very, very good changes. Just to stay on the subject, though, one of the questions that I definitely had was in regards to the Transhumanist Party. Has there been any kind of, let's say, big name people that actually would that show interest in the Transhumanist Party? That it seems like that if there could be more people that are in the limelight, could begin to start drawing a lot more attention. And it seems that there's the subject of being transhumanist it's a very big, broad area, and it would be good to see if there's somebody that could actually hone in on these kinds of subjects as well as be able to present it. Is anything like that in the works?
That's an excellent question, and the answer is yes, sort of. And here's what I mean by that. Transhumanism, like I said, started back in the 50s, progressed through the 70s, and now we're out here where science and technology is starting to really seem supportive of things that transhumanists have been talking about for a long time. Just like physical immortality and other such subjects, there has been this is outside the norm, this is outside generally accepted talking procedure, for decades. As we move to science and technology that's more in line with what transhumanists have been talking about, it's inviting some of those people in. So that's the maybe part. So what's keeping this from being a yes positively? Actually, what it really takes is more people joining organizations like the U.S. Transhumanist Party or Humanity Plus or the Longevity Party or any others that you come across that are doing this. Because when there are bigger numbers, then people that are in higher profile positions are more apt to go out there and say, yes, I identify specifically with a party of this type. So there are some that if I look around out there and I look at what they're talking about, let's stay on politics for a minute. And I'm going to come down on the Democrat side of the House because I think there's probably more room to work there. There are a couple of candidates that have come out and addressed things like universal basic income, which transhumanists have been talking about for a long time. Andrew Yang is one of those, and he's made that the main pillar of his campaign. A couple of the others are nibbling in and around the edges of such a thing. So we're making inroads that way. I would love for one of those people to stand up and say, you know, I embrace transhumanism, but that's not going to happen until they see numbers that are available that, quite honestly, is going to move into political capital for them. So it's really important that we raise the number of people that are registered for the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Getting that number as high as possible. Getting the Arizona Transhumanist Party's numbers as high as possible. Because we also want to work with people on the local level in government. So that's from a political standpoint. But what about entrepreneurs? Art, I know you're an entrepreneur and I'm a bit of one. I know Michael is, and there's others on the call that are. So as an entrepreneur, I want to get out there and work with leading edge technologies. That's where my interest is at. Make them viable for the business environment. And I want to have spokespeople in that technology that I can count on that is going to appeal to a wide enough swath of people that it gives me a marketable area. Well, when you look at large companies, they're no different than a small entrepreneur. And it goes back to numbers once again. When you have people that are clamoring for upgrades in communication and biology and all the different areas and so forth, even political change, it comes down to numbers. So we have some that will make some comments on the side but won't come out and say it directly. Probably not too surprisingly, Elon Musk is one of those. That's a household name. Will he stand up and say, I'm a member of the U.S. Transhumanist Party? Well, let's get to 10,000 members. Let's get to, 50,000 members. Then the answer is going to be yes, because that's going to work in his situation. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. I appreciate it. So I mean, like, there are so many biotech companies. There's several in Tempe that people that are building robotic limbs and different things for prosthetics for people. You would think that this would be a good targeted area that would be approached where they should be able to start having and creating more of a discussion, because now those types of things are working their way into the military programs. They're working their way into a lot of different government subsidized type of programs. And I think once you start getting and gaining that kind of reputation and acknowledgement, especially in those types of industries, now we're talking a lot of things. Especially the military, where the military, they're starting to build these exoskeletons for soldiers. I mean, the Transhumanist Party, would definitely could benefit from, connecting with a lot of these companies that are beginning to do things, even though it may be for, the Department of Defense or whatever, could gain a lot of momentum.
I think you're exactly right, Art. And some of those things like exoskeletons, are showing up. We're seeing that. Go to those Facebook pages that I talk about. That gives you a good start. So we're seeing things like the exoskeleton coming for people that have had injuries or they're in rehabilitation stage, and what they're doing. And that also gets the word out there, but it doesn't necessarily tie it to transhumanism, but that's okay. We're still moving those causes forward. So yeah, you're exactly right. Some of this is going to happen organically, as some people like to use that term. It's going to happen just because it's unfolding, and it'll be hard to stop. I think though, and I go back to the biotech area, if we want things to continue to expand, which I think they will, but we want them to continue to expand at a rate that's beneficial to us, then I think it's really worth our while to get involved. Maybe start off, go to those sites and cross-post into other groups. So I cross-post into computer groups and into aviation groups and things that are outside of, the long life and the transhumanism. That's something to consider. Talk it up at work. Some of the things that I'm doing are based around this. That's the reason I got involved in the local party politics, because I want to start meetups and want to start trying to bring these people in and seeing how we can make this grow, and then start approaching some of the local politicians with some of the ideas that we have for things that we think that could be done locally. Goes back to numbers though, it really does. And because that's what everybody looks at. So thanks for those comments. Yes, there are a lot of different companies that are coming along. Tempe is a hotbed. Of course, Silicon Valley in California is the original hotbed, and they have not slowed down yet either. I think one of the risks that we run into now, with there being so much that's going on out there, is getting a focused message out about specifically what we want to have happen with this, so that we don't get diluted in that real broad spectrum that you talked about. Okay, Michael, if you still have control, oh, never mind. Susan had handed me a note asking to unmute some people, but apparently those folks got unmuted, so thank you. Anyone else have a question? I'll do my best to answer it. Diana.
Yeah, that last comment you made about the focused message that you think we should get out there, how would you put that? I missed a lot of what you were saying. So.
Okay, no, that's just fine. Actually, I think that focused message depends on you. My focused message is going to be on super long life. It's going to be on radical life extension. I do have some interest in AI, and I do have some interest in transportation, some of those things. I think what I mean by focused message is, let's talk amongst ourselves and decide where we have the best opportunities out of the things that we are interested in. So as you go out and read and educate yourself, you're going to come up and you're going to say, wow, I think this over here should be really done. And I might look at that and go, yeah, that's exactly right. And then somebody else may look at that. And then that becomes part of our strategy. And we'll want to pick a number of these. I think we can do that here in the super long life community for those that have an interest. We can do that as a subgroup, or depending how that goes. And I clearly plan to do that with the Arizona Transhumanist Party and the Arizona Longevity Party as parallel political organizations. Where'd you go, Diana?
I don't know where she went, but I'll ask a question.
Okay.
Just a minute. Will you mute that for a minute? I'm muted. Okay, well, Jody's over at the house, and I'm getting it in both ears and bouncing off the ceiling.
It sounded pretty cool, actually.
I want you to turn it the fuck off. Oh, shit. Excuse me.
Edit
Now
that out,
I'm
Michael.
forgot I'm not muted. Okay, so I have a question about what's our projected time that this movement that we're looking at, the Transhumanist Party, actually becomes so, like, what's the projection? I'm just wondering, you know, we're all in, very clear about that. And I'm totally interested in AI. That's a topic of conversation in our household all the time. And this, I'm interested in this as my way of living. So how long are we waiting?
Good question. And I'm sure drones has something to do with it in there if Ben's around. No, to answer your question about when does this reach critical mass, when does this really take off and hit the mainstream? Actually, I think just like radical life extension, I think it's probably closer than I think. If I was just to look at this and go, gee, the U.S. Transhumanist Party only has a few thousand members, you know, and you're looking at, millions, billions of people out there in the world, the U.S. and the world to influence, that would seem pretty small. However, we have tools available to us that allow us to leverage computer technology. So leveraging things like Facebook, Instagram, and who knows what the next hot one will be next year, okay, turns what we're doing into an information technology growth pattern, I believe. So I remember a talk from Jose Cordero, and he was talking, with Ray Kurzweil, and they were talking about the human genome, and they had done like 1% of it. I don't remember the exact numbers, pardon me, but they'd done like 1% of it in 1 year. And the critics came on board and said, well, gee, that means 99 more years before we get to 100% at that rate. And Kurzweil's explanation was, no, that's not true. I project it will happen in about 7 years, because when you take 7 doublings, you get to 100%.
Quantum movement.
And he was exactly right. So there's no reason that we can't use the same kind of technologies, not going out there and doing it the old-fashioned political way, going door to door, handing out flyers. I'm not necessarily against that, but let's use the electronic tools that we do have. So what's that answer? Maybe it's 7 years.
I totally get it. Good. I like that. I like that answer a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, David. I appreciate all this information. I know that, we've talked about a lot of things in the last 10 years or so, all of us in a particular group. And now we're looking at something, it's a little bit different. I guess what I see is that a small group of people can make a huge difference in the world. And I know the critical mass is really important. I know that each of us hold a desire to live as long as we want to live. I'm going to leave it at that, like live as long as we desire to live in the bodies we're in and feeling healthy and well in that.
I absolutely agree with you. And one of the things I do love about transhumanism is it is broad from the standpoint of, say, like, let's take the radical life extension piece. Your comment about wanting to live as long and healthy as possible in the body that you have, perfectly in line with their goals. For somebody that maybe was born with defects, not a fully formed leg, things that are internal that cause them grief, then what we're doing as far as being able to make them live as long and healthy as they want may look different than what some of us would sit here and look at, maybe doing this in our organic skin, if you will. And that also is perfectly in line. So back to Art's point about exoskeletons and artificial limbs and so forth, the work that's being done in that area and supported by transhumanism, and many of the people doing that work are probably transhumanists themselves, goes to support this goal of super long life, and it can take on vastly different looks as it goes. And those looks will morph and change as time goes on. I am really excited about what I've seen with wounded warriors replacing, especially like legs and so forth. And you wouldn't want to have your leg taken off in battle, but if you do, and you can get one of these new modern limb replacements, they can be stronger and faster with those limb replacements than we can with our human faculties. And they're much more fixable if something was to go wrong with them.
Yeah.
So that looks different than what we're talking about, and they're both right in line. And I love the breadth of all the people that are coming together. That's why in this primary election, there's 9 different candidates, and those 9 candidates come at transhumanism from widely different angles. The person that I ended up supporting, I felt was the strongest radical life extension candidate, and that was really my reason for putting him out there.
Okay. So we can, tell us again, when is the transhumanist primary?
Okay, it is in session right now. The last day to register was Saturday.
Oh, okay, I registered.
Okay, so if you registered, then you will have gotten an email. Check your spam bucket because they send a bunch of them out at a time. And there'll be a link in there that will be only for you to use for voting. And then when you vote in the ranked system that I talked about, then you'll get a confirmation. If you go out to the U.S. Transhumanist Party Facebook page, for sure, and go out there and there's a thread, and you can go in on that thread and say, yes, I voted. They'll give you a confirmation back that, yes, we see that yours was accurate and yours is in the count. So you know that your vote counted.
Great.
And if you have any trouble with the ranked preference system, I'm happy to help. That doesn't mean I'll tell you who to vote for. Of course I will if you want me to, but because I have my favorites. But the point is, the ranked preference system is new to a lot of people. So if that confuses you when you look at it, I can help you pick whoever you want and make sure you get them in the right slot. So you vote for who you want in the order that you want.
Got it. And I wonder, are they using blockchain?
We're a bit more manual than that, but we're going to be there. Thank you, Michelle. This has been fun. I enjoy talking about this subject, and I really think it's the subject of the future. It's a subject of my future. I want to create the future that I want to live in. So I am creating the future that I want to live in, and the Super Long Life community is definitely a tool for that. And so are the other organizations that I've laid out there that are in those slides. And if you decide to join any of those other ones, and you can hang out on their Facebook page and read for a while first, that's okay. Educate yourself and then jump in, because you're going to be welcomed.
Thank you so much, David. That was a wonderful presentation. Great conversation, everybody. Are there any other questions from anybody who would like to maybe ask a question as we begin to wrap this up? The only person who hasn't asked a question is Susan.
Oh, she asks lots of them, and she doesn't have to wait for these meetings. But she may have a question.
Okay. I don't have my camera on right now because I've been home from work today and I haven't even had a shower, I haven't done my hair or anything. So I'm not prepared to show myself au naturel on camera. But I just had a question. Did you cover Humanity Plus, David? I'm not sure whether you did, and what actually is Humanity Plus, and explain that there is a membership and just things about that.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Susan. That's good. I did put Humanity Plus, matter of fact, as #1 in the list of transhumanist organizations. It's in that slide set that I told you that you can download off of our Facebook file area. And so let me talk a little bit about Humanity Plus, because they've been around longer than just about any of the other transhumanist organizations that I'm aware of. Matter of fact, a couple of key influential people in the Humanity Plus organization, the managing director of that organization is Natasha Vita Moore. And so she's right here in this town. And she is active in Humanity Plus organizations, which many times support things that are going on in the U.S. Transhumanist Party. For example, she was in California with us when we went over to an event that the California Transhumanist Party was doing. And it was kind of cool for us. We got to meet and hang out with her and get to know her on a personal basis. Up until then, I only knew her really by reputation, and I really grew to really like her one-on-one over a few glasses of wine and talk about transhumanism. Max Moore is part of that organization. Max Moore was one of the early authors back in the 1970s of promoting transhumanism. So these people have been putting themselves out there for quite a while. So what is Humanity Plus? They are the first transhumanist organization. They had another name that had transhumanism in the title, and they've gone to using the Humanity Plus name, short. You'll see just H and a plus next to it. And a lot of it has been getting articles into magazines, periodicals, writing books. If you know David Wood, he's an influential member of that, and he's also an influential member of transhumanist politics, being the chair of the UK Transhumanist Party. This is an international movement. Humanity Plus is education also, and much of that is done by people with masters or doctorates in their particular field, writing for very credible organizations. They do have an open membership from the standpoint that you can go and hang out in their Facebook group. But if you want to get on their mailing list, you want to find out about books and things that are published, you want to find out about events that they're putting on, then I would suggest paying $60 a year, $5 a month, and you can be on the list. And it's a great source and valid source of information about transhumanism. We're also looking, they have local chapters all around the country, and oddly enough to me, there was not a local chapter in the Phoenix area. So I've reached out to them and want to stand up a local Humanity Plus chapter, maybe in parallel with what we're doing with the Arizona Transhumanist Party and the Longevity Party. I feel that there'll be a lot of people that will have common interests in all three of these groups. And then there will be people that will have more interest in one than the other, and we might want to try to accommodate that. So many of the members that I spoke about last time that I said, are people that that are transhumanists are very active in Humanity Plus. Charlie Cam, Liz Parrish, Jose Cadero, Aubrey de Grey, some of those, for example. Great source of information. What else can I say, Susan?
I think you covered it pretty well, David, actually.
Okay, thank you.
I just saw Natasha sent out an email today about Redfest, that they're going to be having a meeting on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock for Humanity Plus. So I'm really interested in going along to that and hearing what she has to say.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. And there'll be one for the U.S. Transhumanist Party also. And there may be breakouts also for other various groups. But those two, the U.S. Transhumanist Party and Humanity Plus, which is an international organization, definitely be there for both of those. Anyone else? You don't have to commit.
I have one other question, David, and that is my technical thing, the thing that I'm really interested in, obviously, is space. And so I post quite a bit about SpaceX and the upcoming launch of Elon Musk's Starship. I don't know if you've seen some of those videos. This Starship is massive. It is a mega. It's like the Godzilla of spaceships that are going to go up. What's really interesting, it's going to take a massive payload into space, and it's going to eject it, and then it's going to come back and land so that it can take another payload up. And that's the point of what SpaceX does. The idea being that they'll be able to take payload after payload and start to generally build something in space to be able to go to Mars and likely begin to populate Mars. How does the Transhumanist Party feel about that level of transhumanism, moving from a single planet species to a multi-planet species?
Yeah, they feel that it's imperative, actually, as I do as well. And I follow some of the same kind of things that you do. And here's something that might be of interest to you, Michael, and others too. Last year around Christmas time, Humanity Plus and the Max Life Foundation, I didn't put them on the list, but that's another transhumanist organization, hosted a seminar followed by a party. So it was a holiday party since it was around, the holiday season. And so we went to that, and people came and presented papers and what their latest research was, which I found was fascinating. And then when the party started, I found my glass of wine to have and started working around the room to introduce myself to some of these people that I've read some of their work but never had an opportunity to talk to, or other people that I just didn't know, because I'm curious who comes to these kind of things. So I'm standing there talking to Charlie Cam, which I think most of you know, funny man Charlie Cam in his videos. And I'm talking with him, and he's talking with this woman, and he says, "Let me introduce you to this woman." So I do, and then it's the cocktail party. Even though it's very interesting people there, what's the first question you start with? "So, what do you do?" She says, "Oh, I work for Elon Musk on the Starship program." How about that? So we had a fascinating conversation, and clearly she knew way more about this than I did. So why do I go to some of these events? That's the caliber of people that you meet at these things. Back to your original question, what is the Transhumanist Party? And transhumanism in general and the Transhumanist Party, a lot of the values are very much the same. They are very interested in the human race becoming a multi-planet species. There's some really good reasons for that, for those that may not have thought about that. I mean, a worldwide catastrophe doesn't necessarily mean it's a catastrophe if you're on the moon, could, or if you're mining asteroids, or if you're on Mars and living underground, or part of a terraforming project. These are all things that they're very, very interested in, and drives many of these people forward.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's a nice little anecdote. Maybe you may see me joining you on a number of excursions here pretty soon. That's very exciting. I would have loved to pick her brain, because I'm so fascinated by what's happening in the world of SpaceX, and yeah, so it's incredible. All right, well, thank you so much, David. Did you have anything else you wanted to add before we wrap this up?
I do want to add my thanks to allowing me to take over for about the last 3 Mondays. And I realize people agreed to that, but it is time sensitive because of what was going on with the Transhumanist Party primary. So thank you very much. Thanks for listening to two different types of candidates between Kim and Ben Zion. One, Kim is very much a doer and organizer in the scientific community. Politics is not her main thing. And then you have somebody like Ben, who is what I call a policy wonk. He understands all the policies, ins and outs, can quote dollar figures, time frames, extremely competent and fortunate, from my viewpoint, to be the radical life extension guy that's among all of those. But anyway, I tried to give you two different approaches to that. And also one with female energy, one with male energy. I mean, that was probably obvious as well.
David, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. I have my ballot thing open now in my email. And so can I just put on Ben's, because I don't really know who to pick for second, third, fifth, sixth, seventh.
I'll tell you what, catch me offline and I'll help you through that, because you do have to fill in all 10. And I'll tell you my opinion, who I think the three strongest radical life extension candidates are, if that's your interest, and I believe it might be. I'll tell you who I think are the three weakest. And then the ones in the center, do with, you know, what you like. But you do have to go through all 10. Okay?
Okay. When does this have to be in by?
First round of voting is this week. So we have, it started on Sunday and it'll run 7 days. And then there's criteria. I'm glad you brought this up. There's criteria for how the winner is selected. So I'll use this as part of my closing comments too. So right now there are right now there's a couple thousand people that
you
are
always remember. Can I keep going?
So is it to me to talk now? Okay, so there are a couple of thousand people in the U.S. Transhumanist Party eligible to vote in this election. Half of them, to make this democratic, half of them actually have to show up at the polls. So until we get half of what's registered, the election won't be over. For a candidate to win, they have to get half of the people that voted. So just picking some numbers out of the air, let's say 2,000 people vote. The winning candidate has to have 1,001 votes as a minimum to be the candidate. So you'll have voting for this first week, and then we'll get told whether those conditions were met or not. If they were, they'll announce who the candidate is that the U.S. Transhumanist Party is going to endorse, and that'll be the standard bearer during the season. If not, then there'll be a second round of voting, and that second round of voting may look exactly like the first round of voting, but may have fewer candidates in it. There may be some candidates, if they do poorly, may drop out. And, you know, presumably the people that voted for them may vote for somebody else, and that may push somebody else over the minimum 50+% for the election. So when's it going to be over by? Well, I hope it's over by RADFest, so that we can go up on the stage. Gennady, the U.S. Transhumanist Party chairman, can go up on the stage and introduce who that candidate is. So anyway, back to what I was saying, is that I really want to thank everybody for letting me take this time. And I really do thank you for your interest. Obviously, it's a passion of mine. I hope that shows. And if I can infect you with any of it, that's great. Jump in at whatever level that you feel like, and that includes 0, okay? Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it. Michael, love you guys.